This show is sponsored by Sevi, answering all your commercial real estate needs. Sevi is the first commercial real estate company committed to the 4 C's: commercial real estate, community, content, and culture. Go visit Sevi at Sevi, SEVI, properties.com. Again, SeviProperties.com. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the DMV Business Show. I'm your host, Otto Sevilla, and today I have a very special guest for you. We have Rita Roy. Rita is the CEO of National Spine Health Foundation. Welcome to the show, Rita.
Hi, Otto. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited to be here today.
I am excited as well. Thank you. So before we get into your personal and business journey, I like the audience to get to know the organization in case they haven't heard of it. They're like, National Spine Health Foundation. Obviously, they have to do something with spine. What do you folks do there, please?
Yeah, well, neck and back conditions are the number one uh, medical condition that affects people and causes disability in the United States and in the world. We say there are 100 million Americans who are suffering from a neck or back problem, and chances are that somebody you know, it's either you or somebody you know. So the prevalence of spine conditions are huge. And up until now, there hasn't been a patient advocacy group pushing for national awareness of spine health, both on the prevention side and on the treatment side. So if something happens to your back, what do you do? And where do you go for a trusted resource to understand how to get yourself back into shape? And so that's what we're here to do at the National Spine Health Foundation.
I love that. How did the whole idea as far as forming the foundation start?
Yeah, well, there were a group of doctors who were involved in research in 2002, actually long ago, as spinal treatments were becoming better and better. So there was a lot of science and new technologies being invented. And these doctors got together and said, we really need to create an organization that can explain to the public that there are treatments that can help people get back to their lives. Because let's face it, a lot of people think that back surgery is bad for you. And there are a lot of bad headlines about getting an operation on your back. But that's old news. There's a lot of good news in spinal health care. And so this was an effort that was really conceived of, over 20 years ago. And so that group was doing some research. They were showing good clinical outcomes on different researching different surgical treatments and non-surgical treatments. But it was not until 2019 or 2018 that they decided that they needed to rename the organization from just the Spinal Research Foundation, to the National Spine Health Foundation, to better represent the three-part mission in education, advocacy, and research. The idea has always been, let's prove that these treatments work, and then let's tell the public about it. And so, it's been a long time in the making. These things don't just happen overnight, right? So that's sort of the history of the founding and where we've been. So there have been some very wonderful philanthropists along the way that have supported the work, that have been interested in medical research, and have been very interested in messaging and public health messaging and public health awareness. So we are grateful to the people who have supported and contributed to the foundation over the years and to this day.
That's great. And how long have you been involved with the foundation?
So I don't know how much you want me to get into my personal journey, but I will say that I joined the board in 2018. And then because of my background and my work experience, the board, I had exited a company, and the board said, would you be willing to take on the role of CEO? We've hired a search firm. We've failed in being able to identify the right executive that can run this organization. Is there any way we could convince you to do this? And I was so passionate about the mission. And I said, well, you know what, I'll give it 2 years. And then I'll, we'll find somebody at that point, and we'll I'll hand the reins over. And it's been 6 years. So I started in January of 2019. Of course, the world had a different idea for everybody's time when COVID hit in 2020. So I was a year into the job, and I couldn't leave then. So we've just taken off really since then, and it's been really exciting to see the growth and the impact of the organization.
That's amazing. Rita, are you originally from this area, the DMV?
I am not originally from this area. I came to Washington, D.C. for college, and I was one of these young high school students who wanted to go to medical school, knew that it was a long journey. My parents were immigrants. I'm a first generation American. I was really worried about how I was going to pay for things, how I was even going to get there. And I just thought if I just work really, really hard, this path is going to emerge for me. And so I found out about George Washington University because I came to Washington as a young high schooler on a program called Girls Nation, which is a program that teaches high schoolers about government. And I was interested in government from the standpoint of public health. I didn't know that about myself. I didn't know what those words were back then, but that's where my interest was. And so we were staying in dorms at George Washington University, and I saw this incredible university and researched it and found out that they had an accelerated program where you could apply to medical school and undergraduate at the same time. So provided you had a certain GPA and did the degrees, a spot was saved for you in medical school. And so that's what I did, and that worked out really well for me.
That's amazing. You said you're first generation immigrant here. So where you or your family from originally?
So my parents are Middle Eastern. My father is half Indian. My mother is half Turkish, and they met in Iraq, and they immigrated here from Baghdad in the early 1960s. And I was born in Bartlesville, Oklahoma, of all places. So that's my my family immigration story.
That's
And
great. So you grew up in Oklahoma, I guess all through elementary, middle,
not
high
at
school?
all.
No?
So
Oh,
lived in Oklahoma until about till just before I started kindergarten. My dad was then working for an oil company, and we were transferred to England. So I spent my childhood in London. I went to the American School of London, and then we were transferred back to the States, where I started junior high school just outside of Denver in Littleton, Colorado. So finished high school in Littleton, and then moved to Washington to do an internship on Capitol Hill, and then to start college at George Washington University.
so
And I've been here ever since.
I guess that's the reason there's no British accent because like if you grew up in London, I would think even though maybe you went to an American school, you would pick up on the accent. But I guess you moved back here. You said around middle school.
Yeah, around middle school. So I was 12 when I came back, but I had a pretty thick accent when I came back. And of course, my parents had a different accent.
Sure.
It was all, there was some identity confusion, I think, when I got there into middle school. We're all having identity crises in middle school. Mine was just, conflated with international family and international living. But I did have an accent for a while, but it left.
So at home, Rita, what was the language that was spoken? Was it English? Was it Turkish? Was it some?
My parents spoke Arabic at home,
Okay.
and so they spoke Arabic to each other. But in the 60s, we had a different view of education in our country. And my mother, who didn't speak English at all, was speaking Arabic to my sisters and I. And we started in a preschool there in Bartlesville. And the preschool teacher called my parents in for a conference and said that we were having language delay because we weren't speaking English at home, and they needed to stop speaking Arabic to us immediately, or we were going to fall behind. And so sadly, around 4 years old, my mother began to take English classes and watched TV to learn, to immerse in the language, and stopped speaking Arabic to us, and only English. But they spoke Arabic to themselves. So we grew up in a non-English speaking household, but we all learned English along the way together. So that was my home.
So as far as your Arabic, do you know any basic Arabic or no?
Well, yeah, a little bit. Yes. It's funny. I can be in an elevator with people and they'll be speaking Arabic, and I fully fluently understand everything that they're saying.
Oh, that's
That's
great.
interesting. My audio is very strong, but my spoken is
Sure.
not as strong because I was listening to my parents all the time in Arabic and answering in English. So that's, but if I'm immersed in it, I can speak pretty well.
It just reminds me of my oldest child, and it was a little similar growing up where his main language at home was Russian just because my in-laws and my wife, that's their primary language. And his
Mhm.
second language was Spanish because I would talk to him in Spanish. And then around the age of 4, I think similar to you, prior to starting elementary school, and he was even going to a Russian daycare here. And in Potomac, we would take him, I remember. And prior to elementary school, we're like, he doesn't know basically maybe 5 words of English, thank goodness, to Mickey Mouse, right? And I was like, let's switch it and put him in the American daycare to prepare him for elementary school. And then when that switch happened, my son Liam all of a sudden went to fluent Russian, and second language Spanish was just all English. And even now he's a teenager. He understands Spanish when
Yeah.
he hears it, the gist of it, but it's just all English.
Yeah. But it's in there. It's in there, but it's
Yeah.
hard. It is, you want to do the right thing for your kids, so I think you did the right thing.
Thank you. So if I can just briefly take you back, childhood. I know childhood for you, part of it was London and then also Colorado outside of Denver. What were you into? What did you like? If you could just remember maybe outside of school, any either sports or extracurricular activities that you enjoyed?
Yes, it's interesting. I grew up in a household where my parents did not grow up in the United States, and my mom, growing up in a Middle Eastern country, also as a woman didn't have a lot of exposure or opportunities to participate in a lot of things, and so my parents were extremely patriotic. They were just all in, go America, and they wanted their kids to just have that American experience, and so when we got back to the States and sort of planted roots in Littleton, we were all in, gung ho, participating fully in school activities and extracurriculars and homecoming and, all the things. I was a cheerleader, like, on the
Oh, wow.
squads and in the marching band, like we just did everything. And I would say more on the art and performance side, not so much on the athletic sides. And I think again, the bias that my parents had was that girls didn't play sports, even though they really wanted to overcome that barrier. They encouraged us to learn how to swim and you know play softball and learn tennis and so we got to do some of those things. We were mostly involved in music. My dad was a musician; that was his hobby on the side, and so we did a lot of music. And that's where the pom pom squad and the marching band and all that stuff came in. The one sport that we did do as a family was we skied because we were in Denver, and so my dad would love to take us up to the mountains on the weekends, and we'd get on skis and we'd go to a different mountain every weekend and we'd ski all the time. So that was the one gift that I got, even though I didn't participate in organized sports teams. We stayed pretty active that way. So
That's great. What's
yeah,
your instrument of choice?
I would say piano.
Okay.
I would say piano. I got to be on the drum line for a while. That was really fun, doing the bells and the xylophones and a little bit of snare. So that was really fun. My dad was a saxophonist and a pianist and a drummer. So he grew up in a very musical family. So yeah, I would say piano. My kids all play violin pretty well, and they do a little piano as well. So
I love that. I would say probably me personally, the violin is my favorite. My oldest was for a period of time in elementary school was doing the trumpet, and now my wife's trying to get him into guitar lessons, but he's not really taking. He doesn't want to, but we'll see.
yeah, yeah, we'll see. Well, it's like, there were some moms and I were talking about, instruments and getting the kids to practice their instrument. And no harm was ever done by demanding your child to practice their instrument, right?
Mhm.
Like no harm was done by doing that to your kids. And I think that music is so important to the developing brain, and there's so many neurologic studies that show that. And so even if they just get a little bit of that in there, I think you've done good. So
Yeah,
um, yeah.
I agree. So you come to DC to attend GW for both your undergrad and medicine. And what happens then?
Yeah, so first time away from home.
You go
Um,
crazy?
no, I didn't go, I was so worried about keeping that medical school spot. It was
Hmm.
all about the next thing. So it was very hard to be in the moment because I was always worried about the next thing. And, I felt there was a lot riding on me that I had to do well. I had to succeed. My parents were, you know, not banking on that, but had invested a lot and let me go. And, really, it was expensive just to buy an airplane ticket, to come across the country. There was not a lot of extra funds. We were not poor by any stretch, but upper middle class family. They're just budgets are tight, right? So there's just not a lot of um, fudge factor in there in what you can do. So I just felt a huge responsibility to do well and to succeed and to perform in college. But that said, I did have fun. I did find ways to have fun and built great friendships and joined a sorority and did some fun things and social things in school. But it was pretty much all academics all the time. I would say I was very much head in the books and um, determined to do well. And it was hard. College was hard. I came out of high school on a very high note, feeling, really empowered and like I had this great education and I was ready for it. And college was hard. It was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. So that was like a lot to learn.
Yeah, a lot of more hours of studying had to be put in, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I came to the East Coast from the West Coast, and I went to a big public high school in Littleton. Excellent high school. I had excellent teachers. I, did the AP track. I was surrounded by smart kids. So, I felt, again, like I said, I felt very confident. But when I got to the East Coast, there was just a different level of education and knowledge that I felt with the kids who grew up on the East Coast. A lot of kids had grown up in private schools. Um, the education is the education level I just think was higher than what I had known, and so I really felt this discrepancy. Even though I was in the highest track in this big public high school, it just was not at the same level as some of these kids, a lot of these kids that came from, you know, schools on the East Coast. A lot of them, again, were private school kids or just really intense, public schools, again, in the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts, areas around here in the Northeast. So college was hard. It was hard.
What did you end up majoring in at GW?
I majored in philosophy.
Okay.
But because I had to take so many pre-med requirements, I ended up double majoring in zoology. So I had this philosophy and zoology double major. My dad lost his job while I was in college, and that made it impossible for me to be able to stay in college. So I I I just really busted it and took lots of credit hours, and I was able to graduate in 3 years and
Oh,
shave off a
wow.
year of college. And that really helped my parents out. And but now I had a gap year, right? So I was going to
Mhm.
go right into med school, but I'm like, now I have this empty year, and I don't know what to do with myself. And so I had been working really hard as an undergraduate student, and so one of the professors in the biology department encouraged me to apply to be his graduate student and work on a master's thesis project with him. And so I did that. And so I was on a full ride in grad school. And I got to be a teaching assistant. I got to do a lot of things. I got to really hone much more advanced science classes because philosophy was my main degree. So it actually turned out to be really great. And I got a little teaching stipend. Everything was paid for. So that was a really wonderful time in my life to kind of have those 2 years to sort of just decompress a little bit after this very intense undergraduate time that I had and prepare myself to go to medical school. I actually applied to some other medical schools because I thought maybe I should see what my options are and maybe I should look at some other programs. And so I did that. And in the end, I decided to stay at GW. I had made so many connections at that point, and I knew the program so well, having gone through the graduate, program. So I got my master's degree, and I deferred med school for a year, and then started med school between, college and med school. Got that master's degree, and because I was, um, you know, taking these really advanced courses, and some of the courses are the same courses you take as a medical student, that made my first year of medical school a little bit easier. So I was like, finally, I'm like finally starting a new program where I don't feel like I'm behind when I
Hmm.
started. In fact, I was ahead of the curve, and I was able to tutor my classmates in biochemistry and in histology and physiology. So these were courses, advanced courses that I had taken in grad school that I had to teach to undergrads. And now I could tutor and be a leader in my med school class. So that was a really wonderful time in my life.
That's
Um,
great. During
that
med school,
transition.
Rita, did you have an idea as far as, what medicine you want to go into? What were you thinking back then?
So that was the funny thing, and it's such a great question that you asked me that. My whole life had been getting to medical school.
Hmm.
That was it. Then there was not that next phase of like, okay, then what? And I think at the time it was just, I'm going to get into med school and then I'll figure out the next thing, right?
Yeah.
And as I got, into the advanced years in medical school, I realized from my classmates, many of them came to medical school with a plan of what they wanted to do. And so then I was like, oh my gosh, I'm behind again. Like I'm behind the curve. Like I don't know. I just thought I'd come here, I would try it all out, I would see what resonates, and then I would pursue that path. And it's like anything. It's like, well, the more you know going into it, the better, the more likely you are going to be able to get the outcome that you want. And I just didn't know. I had all kinds of different ideas, and I loved procedural medicine, so getting my hands involved in things. And I went through the rotations, and I just sort of said, let me just see what really floats my boat and
Hmm.
what I'm most excited about and most interested in, and I'll go for that. So that was sort of my approach to what I wanted to do. But I was an anomaly. I think most of my classmates sort of knew I'm gonna do radiology, I'm gonna do pediatrics, I'm gonna do, like, I really had no idea.
Did you gravitate more towards something specifically?
So as I was going through the rotations, I did gravitate more towards the interventional specialties, and I really, really fell in love with surgery. And I felt like, surgery was this definitive treatment for people, right? And
Hmm.
so, you go to see a surgeon, you have some structural problem that needs to be repaired. And I was always really into arts and crafts, and so like suturing and stitching and like being able to definitively fix something and use my hands to do that, just really felt right. And I really resonated with the surgeons in my residency. That was sort of a personality type that I felt that I gelled with, and
Hmm.
and I just sort of mentally felt like, oh, I found my people. Like I found where I need to be. And so that is where I then started specializing my electives and things around surgical subspecialties.
So once you completed med school, did you have an idea as far as, okay, now I'm done, I'm thinking of doing this next, or?
Yeah, so I applied to general surgery residencies, and my thought at the time was that I was this was in 1994. There were not a lot of women in surgery. There it was beginning to change. So there were more and more women choosing surgery specialties. At George Washington University, the class of 1994 was the first medical school class that had more women than men enrolled in a med school class by one. So it was pretty 50-50. It was like, 50% men, women, but there was one more a female student. And so, so it's interesting because I was sort of at that turning point in medicine. And now we don't think twice about having female physicians or female surgeons, but it really was a turning point in 1994. And so I applied for general surgery residency. It's a 6-year training program. And when you apply to that, what you want to do is get into a categorical spot. That means you've been given the 6-year program. Oftentimes, people will do a year of general surgery and then move on to other surgical fields like orthopedic surgery, trauma surgery, cardiothoracic surgery, other surgical fields, but you start in general surgery and then you go into these others. I wanted to do just general surgery because I envisioned being a surgeon that focused on women's health issues, breast cancer, breast surgery, and that type of procedure. That was where I saw myself going with my career at that point. And so I was really honored and excited and delighted when I was given this categorical position as a general surgery resident at George Washington University Hospital. So that is where I started. And I was the only woman in my program.
Is that how it ended with general surgery?
No, so this is where life gets interesting.
Okay.
And so I've gone through my whole life doing the sciences, going to medical school. I'm going to be a doctor. That's all I'm going to do. That's all I did. That's what I focused on. I had this interest in public health, so worked on Capitol Hill, sort of did those internships, up there, studied philosophy because it's sort of the thinking behind how we do things as society, right? So like interested in a lot of those things. I was really good at teaching. I loved my teaching years in my master's program. And I thought to myself, gosh, one day I would love to be able to be one of these network doctors, like a Dr. Timothy Johnson or Sanjay Gupta. But you're a medically trained person that understands public health, and that you have a forum, you have a soapbox or an opportunity to educate the public about healthcare. And that's something I'm really passionate about. I saw that in Capitol Hill. I've seen that as a teacher. I've seen that as, now in a hospital setting, that there is a bigger need to educate the public on various aspects of healthcare. And I'd like to do that one day. Well, so I started my residency and I was doing general surgery. And there was a medical fellow who was starting a computer medicine program at GW, and they were building a surgical simulator lab. And this is at the time when laparoscopic surgery was really coming into its sort of heyday. So the idea that you could put a tube in with a camera and you look at a screen and you do the surgery this way. So you're looking at the screen and the patient is down here and you're using these tools. And that really lends itself to computer simulation because you're looking at a screen and you're doing a procedure down here with your hands. And so they were building a simulation lab at GW. And I just thought that was the most fascinating thing. I'm like, that is so cool to be able to educate people on a simulator, not people, to be able to educate surgeons on a simulator before they go into an operating room. It's sort of like what they do with pilots, right? Pilot goes into the flight simulator before they go fly a plane. That makes a lot of sense to me. And this starts sparking my that teacher in me that wants to educate, want to educate the public, I want to educate my peers. I'm all excited about this. Well, so there was an opportunity for someone to collaborate with these computer guys that didn't really know about surgery. And I got interested in that. And so I sort of went down there into the computer medicine department. I was like, what are you guys doing? I want to know more about this. And what is this like? And so I see all these wires and computer boxes, and I don't know anything about computers. I knew nothing about computers. And I got interested in this. And so I start talking with the fellow who's come from Harvard to do a fellowship program and build a computer science program at GW. And we start talking about surgical simulators, about public education. And he had started a commercial enterprise to be able to commercialize some of these ideas that he was doing at GW. And I was like, commercialization? What's that? Is that, I only know commercials on TV. That was not even a word I even knew or heard of. And so I got really excited about what does that mean? You come up with these ideas and then you start a company, and then that company is the platform then to go out and evangelize these things that you want to do. Like, that's amazing. Is that how the world works? I had no idea. I've been in academics for my entire life. I'm like 27 years old and I've only been in school my whole life. And so I start getting excited about this. And so um, that sort of sparked my interest in commercialization. And that was when that started. So I worked on a little project with the simulator stuff,
Hmm.
and that went along. And then literally as the simulator stuff was happening, this thing called the World Wide Web emerges. And it's 1995, and the concept of the internet is here. And it's like, you can put information on that and people can use a computer and get that information. So this idea for me of, wow, we could use the internet to put the informed consent on the internet, and people could read that before they come to the hospital, and they would know more about what procedure was happening to them. And that really sparked my interest in pursuing that, because I had just spent the last year as an intern. So your first year of your residency is your internship year. And in 1995, when you were going to have a surgery, you would go to the hospital the day before your surgery and get checked in. You'd get your blood work done. You would get pre-opt in the hospital the night before your surgery. We don't do it that way anymore, right? You go, you get your blood work done, you get all your, and then you show up for surgery, and maybe you're going to stay overnight or a couple of nights, depending on, what's happening. But back then, and it was the intern's job to get all the pre-op stuff done, make sure the bloods were drawn, make sure they signed all their papers. And it was mostly signing the papers. We had to sign, literally, we had charts, and patients had to sign, like, Mr. Thomas, you're going to have a colectomy. We're going to cut your bowels out. You're going to have a bag. You might get an infection. You could bleed. And they're like, huh? What? Okay. Where do I sign? And I was like, this is terrible. People need to know more about like, this can't be the way we do it. So I got really excited about using the internet to teach people about their condition, their treatment options, their surgical procedures, and what we could do about that. So I go to a conference with the simulator, right? And we have this. So I go to the American Academy of Family Practitioners conference. I'd never been to a medical conference. I get there and I'm like, this exhibit hall, what is an exhibit? What is a trade show? Wait, they build this whole city in like a day, and they have it for like 3 days, and then they take it all down? Like, are you serious? What is that? Whole new universe. It was so exciting. I'd never been to a trade show. I'm like, medical trade shows? What is that? Like, there's this whole other universe of healthcare that I'd never known about, never heard about, never seen. And it was exciting. And so I was, in talking about the simulator, how you can use simulators, you could teach better. And I met a pharmaceutical executive, and he approached me and said, I'd love to be able to tap into you. We've got this bulletin board service, and we want to move it to the internet and create the world's best healthcare website. There was no healthcare website on the internet. There wasn't one. It didn't exist. And I said, I'd love to do that. I would love to be involved in doing that. The internet is going to be the greatest place to share information. Duh. Like, yeah, we obviously, but that was like, there was no healthcare information on the internet. So this man says to me, I have a budget of about $250 to get this done in the next year. And I was like, oh, $250? Can't even buy a computer for $250. And he's like, no, $250,000 to, put an initial investment into, build a website. I was like, $250,000? I've never even said that. Like, that word has never come out. And I was like, well, I think we could do something with that budget then. So that is how I started a company on call one night called Medical Consumer Media, where we took funding from Glaxo Wellcome to build the world's first healthcare website. And it was called helix.com. And it was an acronym that stood for the Healthcare Education, Learning, and Information Exchange. And took a leave of absence from my residency at that point because I had a year to build this thing. And the internet took off. We set the example and wrote the standards on how to put healthcare information on the internet, because now at this time, the guy that was doing the simulation stuff has come over into the internet world with me. We fall in love, get married, start the company together, grow the company, ride the internet wave, and I become a serial entrepreneur in healthcare information and communications. And here
Wow.
I am. And all of that took place. We started our first business in Bethesda, Maryland. And then we moved to Virginia, and grew three companies in Virginia over the years. So,
All healthcare technology related, right?
all healthcare technology, continuing education, patient support materials. We developed some patented technology around taking supporting conferences. So taking conference materials, putting it on the internet, wrapping an e-learning platform around that. So we did some really incredible work that I'm really proud of. But it's just so funny to go from I'd never even heard of a trade show in my life to running a substantial company, earning millions of dollars a year doing medical conference support. So, in just, the time span of 5 years. So that was a really exciting and rewarding journey. So I left the practice of medicine, but I played a significant role in healthcare in different ways that gave me gratification as someone who spent my entire life trying to become a doctor. The thing that was hard about that, though, was explaining to my parents what I was doing.
I'm sure, especially immigrant parents, right? And they're like, "Oh, medicine, the medical degree," and then all of a sudden, mom and dad, no, I'm leaving all that and I'm pursuing this
Yeah,
business venture where who knows how it may go.
I know. I know. And, I remember the day that my husband and I were driving a U-Haul truck. We were delivering some computers to the University of Maryland, Baltimore, and they were setting up a pilot site for us to test a software tool. And I'm literally driving a U-Haul truck to Baltimore. And my mom just cried. She just cried. And she said, my daughter, the doctor, is driving a U-Haul truck. What has happened? And I said, no, 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 no. That's not what's happening. We've got this incredible educational tool. They're going to pilot it at the University of Maryland. It's going to be amazing. And, so it was, that was a little hard.
Rita, the first company, am I thinking, is it sort of pre-WebMD what we have today, something like
Yeah,
that?
we helped launch WebMD. We were one of the companies that they consulted with, and because we had put this healthcare information on the internet, and WebMD wasn't even WebMD when they first started. There was drcoop.com, there was WebMD, there were quite a few medical sites that popped up
Hmm.
in the early internet days, and we were a vendor to just about every single one of them.
Wow. You mentioned three companies, and this was all in a period of 5 years, all three?
No,
Oh,
no,
okay.
no. I was saying that, from the time that I went to my first trade show in healthcare, which would have been 1995, to exiting medical consumer media, which we exited in, gosh, I guess it was 3 years. Exited that company in 1999. That was that 4 year stretch was just wild. I
Okay.
went from knowing nothing about business to running a very successful, highly desired, growing. We had 120 employees at the time that we sold our company, and a very successful exit in 1998. This is a funny story. I feel like I'm talking too much, but
No, no, please.
for the founders and entrepreneurs out there who want to start something up, when we've set up medical consumer media, I had a QuickBooks thing, and I'm learning QuickBooks. I had QuickBooks for Dummies. I had all the Dummies series books, and I'm trying to learn about business. I also taught myself HTML because I was programming in the early days. I was just doing everything, and I had gone from being a surgery resident where we were on 24 hours and then off 24 hours, on 24 hours, off, and you're not really off for 24 hours because it's like the time you leave the hospital and then you come back the next morning. So I was used to that pace and so I was like, wow, in business, when you work really hard, if you could work as much as you want. and do as much as you want. So it's just up to you. You're your own rate limiting factor.
Hmm.
And the crazy thing is, like, if I make a mistake in business, I just lose a little money. Nobody dies. So
Yeah.
this is easy. Like, this is easy. I'll do this all, like, this is not hard at all. People are like, oh my gosh, you work so hard. I'm like, do I? I had no perspective on what hard work, is, because all I knew was medical training and, studying around the clock and then working around the clock. So, but I think if you talk to most successful founders, they'll say they work around the clock. And I think it kind of takes that kind of, passion, drive, and commitment and grit for what you're doing. But the funny story was that, so we set up medical and consumer media. I'm reading, QuickBooks for Dummies, and we go in to meet with a banker because we're starting to get money in, but I'm spending the money before the check arrives. So I have accounts receivables, but I have payments that are due. So I just need this little line of credit. So when that money comes in, right?
Yeah.
So we sit in front of the banker, we're asking for a line of credit, and I show him a balance sheet and it doesn't balance the assets and liabilities. I'm like, well, right now I owe more than I have. So why would it balance? I just didn't get it. I didn't understand. I had never learned income statements, balance sheets, financials. I'd never seen it in my life. But I'm trying to learn it, right? I'm trying to read the books. There's no internet site. There's no
Yeah.
internet to learn. So we're sitting with this banker, and he was just a wonderful gentleman from Burke and Herbert Bank, a wonderful Virginian, and he'd been at the bank for a long, long time. Lovely man. And I'm, doing my thing, and I'm talking about what we're doing. And this internet's going to be big, and we're growing our business, and and he looked at me and he scratches his head and he's like, okay, okay. I, you know, I see financials like that. This is not your strong point. That can be taken care of. And he said, if this all doesn't work out, you can just go back to being a doctor, and that's a pretty low risk, uh, you know, you know, effort for me to take. So I'm going to give you this loan because if that business doesn't work out, you're just going to go be a doctor and you'll be able to pay it off and it'll be fine. So he approves us for the line of credit with financial statements that are not even accurate. They're not, I mean, they're just not even. And that's, you get those lucky breaks in life. That could never happen now. I just don't think that could ever happen now. But that was just one of those moments where this man took a leap of faith, and my medical degree came in so handy because that was that was the risk mitigating factor that gave him the confidence to say, let's just give these guys $500,000 line of credit. We'll do it. And the business took off, and it was amazing. And I learned a lot, and I hired an accountant, and I didn't have to worry about the financial statements, but I did try to learn. And I have learned a lot.
There you go. That's great. Yeah, he was banking on you, really. Yeah.
Yes, he was. Yeah.
During the three companies you had, Rita,
Mhm.
was the objective, the goal always to let's get acquired, let's see if we can sell off, or that just happened to happen that way?
Again, because I knew nothing about business and I
Hmm.
never took a business class in my life, when we sat down with our first investment advisor, so now we're making a lot of money. People are throwing money at internet companies, and we're just going as fast as we can. Okay, so we start making a lot of money, and we have assets. We have financial assets that we think we probably should invest in something. So we got together with investment advisors, and they sat with us and they said, okay, well, what's your exit strategy? And I said, what? And what's your exit strategy? What are you looking to exit? What time frame? What's your horizon? And I was like, I don't ever want to exit. I love this. I built this company. This is what I've been wanting to do. I thought I would be doing this much later in my life. I thought I would have a platform to educate the public about healthcare later, after I slaved away as an academic clinician in some hospital somewhere, and then I would get burned out, and then I would go do this. But this opportunity came now, and so I'm doing this now, and I never want to stop doing it. And they just looked at me and they're like, "Oh my God, she doesn't get it." So that was the first time I learned that actually people build companies and they exit them, and that's a legitimate and normal thing to do when you go
Hmm.
into business. So they kind of planted that seed. So we were not planning an exit anytime soon. We were just young and ambitious, and I mean, I wasn't even 30 years old yet, when this was all happening. So it was like, I don't know what my future is going to hold. I don't know. I just love what I'm doing now, and I want to keep doing it. Well, in 1999, there was a big initiative of rolling up healthcare companies so that the dominant players were sort of, shaking out. And we got approached by a Paul Allen-backed venture group. It was called Health Answers, and they were rolling up all these medical kind of med ed companies and website. They were websites, right?
Hmm.
.com companies, and rolling them up. And we got an offer that we couldn't refuse, and that was in 1999. And I just was like, I want to stay. So I got to stay on. They wrote a contract for me. And I got to stay on as the chief medical officer for the larger entity. And now I start learning what it means to get acquired and do an acquisition, and how you do an integration of a smaller entity into a larger entity, and the unbuilding of so many of the things that we worked so hard to build. And it was heartbreaking to watch that happen. And I was living the episode of, the chapter in the business school books on the entrepreneur knows how to drive the business. Company comes and buys them, and somehow the business isn't still doing what the entrepreneur knew how to do, because now the new owners want to do things differently, and now it's not singing the way that it did, but the
Hmm.
entrepreneur can't do things that way because it doesn't work that way anymore. And I lived through that, and that was just really fascinating and an incredible thing to learn. And so that was 1999 into 2000, and then in 2000, the internet bubble burst. And golly, if I had not done that sale when I did, I don't know what would have happened. So we got really lucky time wise.
You
I,
did. Great timing.
yeah, so really good timing. So now they come to me and say, you've got this big contract for 3 years. We'd like to maybe buy you out of your contract and negotiate a separation because we can't afford it because everything has crashed. I am now pregnant with my second child, and I was ready to step back. And so I took a buyout, and I took a position back at GW on the faculty there. And I had my second baby, and I was doing some kind of distance learning work with the university, kind of staying involved a little bit, and just kind of watching the pieces of the business that I had worked so hard to build just sort of fall apart.
Mm.
And that was really tough to watch that happen. The interesting that happened in that acquisition is that we had submitted these patents, and 2 of them had already been awarded, but we had a portfolio of, I think it was 6 patents at the time, that were in process that we thought were the absolute value proposition of medical consumer media. When the roll-up happened, when the acquisition happened, and so those patents had a valuation that put our valuation higher than what they wanted to pay for us. And they said, you know what? We don't want the patents. We're going to carve those out. You keep the patents. We don't want the patents. We're just going to go with this number for your company. So we were like, fine. So the patents are sitting over here. Internet bubble bursts. Companies are tanking. They're hemorrhaging. And a year later, we bought back our company for pennies on the dollar and start the build up again. But now we've got the patents. So now there are 6 patents, and those patents are actually worth some. We believe they're actually really worth something. And it turned out that so we start the new Astute Technology, and those patents enable us to build this very competitive e-learning platform now. So we go from being just a .com making websites to now we have this enterprise solution. Now we've learned a lot more. And so now we have this enterprise solution tool that we are now selling back to the medical community. And Astute Technology took off, and we ran that business for a dozen years. And then 12 years later, 12 or 15 years later, I can't remember, a company comes to us and says, we want to buy your patents. And we're like, I knew those patents were going to come in handy one day. And they said, in fact, we want to buy the patents and we want your vertical. We want the medical vertical on this e-learning stuff. So this is a big PE-backed e-learning business that wants healthcare and medical as a vertical. We weren't looking to, again, we're just sort of going along. We're happily fueling our lives, doing the thing we love doing, and I don't know, see where this takes us. And so now we get this offer for an acquisition. The terms were good. And we were like, okay, I guess this is the right time to think about the next thing. We sold the company the sale went through in December of 2018. Sorry, December of 2017.
Okay.
I leave the company entirely. My husband stays on. So he stays on throughout 2018 and throughout 2019. And remember, well, and I think the final papers were done sometime in early 2018. So it was finally done, a done deal, stock transfer, all the things. So mid 2018. It was a conference business. It was a business that went into medical conferences, captured the content, and built out e-learning solutions. Lots of conference support. So business sort of hinges on live meetings taking place. So you know where I'm going.
COVID.
2020, they're out of business. We had sold. I mean, this is like the second time in my life.
Wow, this is crazy.
Crazy.
And tell me, you buy them again for pennies on the dollars a couple of years later. Really?
So when we sold the first time, the .com business, we buy it back, pennies on the dollar. They just gave it away to us. They're just like, take it.
Okay.
Here it is, take it. So what did we get? We got all of our customers back. Not all of them, but some of them. And they're like, oh, good, you're back. Great. Okay, let's see. And then we start selling this other idea. We're like, look, the world is changing. Streaming services are here. Broadband is everywhere. And we can finally, these things that we patented are now we can execute them. Now we can implement them. And, started knowing what was coming down the pike. We were a little early on. And that's why when they bought us, they're like, we don't know what to do with that. That's no value to us. We don't get it. And we're like, you're missing the point. Technology is moving, right? And so now we were able to bring those patents in, build up the company and run that company, and had massive, I mean, we were the only owners then in that business. And so all the equity, is ours. And we did have one investor along the way, a minority owner. But it was just a great, it was a great exit. So exited the company. I had broken my back along the way, had kids, did all the things, broke my back. I think it was a skiing accident from way back when, and I needed a spinal fusion. And I'm realizing that we're almost at close to an hour here, so I'll make this part fast, the transition fast. But I needed a fusion. I was petrified to have back surgery. Everything I read about back surgery was terrible. It was bad news. I put that fusion off for 10 years, but finally, after we sold the company, I was like, I got to take care of this. Like, I need to take care of this. And I knew that I was going to need time for recovery, and I just couldn't do it when I was doing the business and raising the kids and all. I was like, I don't want to. And so, but now I was starting to have paralysis and I couldn't put it off anymore. So I went to see a surgeon here in Virginia, top rated spine surgeon. And he told me he was going to do an ALIF, an anterior lateral interbody fusion. So that means he was going to go through my belly and fix my spine, a front approach. And I was like, wait a second, I did general surgery for years. No orthopedic surgeons ever cut open the belly. They did like knees and shoulders and joints. And what are you talking about? I've never heard of this. I've never heard of this procedure, and I'm not living under a rock. Like I'm educated, I'm healthcare, I'm creating educational programming. I've never heard of this procedure. It's experimental. But where's the information on it? And there was no like American Heart Association of spine.
Hmm.
There was some information here and there. He had a nice website with his practice. It had some good information. And I said, I want to talk to someone who's been through this. Like I don't know, and I've never heard of this. And I've been working in healthcare. I've been working for healthcare associations for 25 years. Why is there no information in spine? And he said, well, actually, I've started a foundation a number of years ago. We could really use somebody with your skills to help us in that foundation. And this is exactly what we want to do, is educate the public about spine conditions and spine treatments. But let's get you through your surgery first. And then I'd like to have coffee with you and talk with you about that. My surgeon is saying this to me. So I'm like, okay. So I have the surgery. It goes beautifully. Amazing. I recovered beautifully. I was so mad that I spent my 40s in with chronic low back pain and being fearful of surgery and just not doing it. I didn't ski, I didn't play tennis, I didn't do any of the things that I love doing because it hurt. And it would, cause a flare up and then I'd be debilitated. So I was like, this has got to change. Like, this has really got to change. And someone has got to tell people not to be afraid. Like, get educated, learn, find the right surgeon, get the right diagnosis, get the right treatment, and get it done and get on with your life. And so I joined the board in 2018, and I get to the board. This is a nonprofit board, and I've been advising nonprofits my entire career. Very comfortable with being in the boardroom. I served on nonprofits during my mom journey. So I learned how to be I served on the school board, I served on an arts board, I served on a state board. So I understand sort of how to be a board member, and what kinds of things a nonprofit board should be thinking about. But in particular, because I had been a vendor to healthcare nonprofits, I really understood the business of healthcare nonprofits. And I was like, guys, you've got money in the bank, you have great board of directors, you've been doing everything right, you've got landmark research that you did in 2007, 8, and 13, big papers that they published. You've got all the elements here. This should be on fire. Like, we gotta blow this out. And so I get really excited about what can be possible. And so at the end of my first year of serving on the board, the executive committees came to me and said, would you ever consider being the CEO? We hired Korn Ferry, we did an executive search, we just can't find the right person that has your skill set. It's really like a startup. And we really need someone with that startup mentality to get us going. And I was like, well, I just retired. Like I retired, I fixed my back, I'm skiing again, I'm playing tennis all the time. Like, I don't want a job. I'm not looking
Yeah.
for a job, but I'm passionate about this because I lived it.
Hmm.
And and so it's all the things that I love. It's the research that I did for 2 years as a graduate student. It's the education that I love doing. It's the nonprofit work that I understand fundraising and why that's important and how to do it. I understand the pharmaceutical industry. I understand continuing medical education. I know how to do all those pieces, and we just need to do those things here. And I said, I'm not looking for a job. There's no way in the world you can even pay me what I'm worth. That's not what this is about, and I'm not going to do this as a part-time thing. There's no such thing as part-time work. I know what needs to happen. I'm going to come in and help you. I'm going to give you 2 or 3 years max. And then, and it'll be a great organization and someone can take the reins and run with it. And as I said in the beginning, I'm 6.5 years into it and I love it. I love it. It's a passion project and we're making a difference. And every day is a new challenge. And I approach my nonprofit work just like I would any other startup that I've ever been involved in. And at the end of the day, it is a business. It needs to stay alive. It needs to be funded. It needs to have legs. It needs to be relevant. It needs to take care of its people. You need to build a team. You need to do all those things in order to make the mission happen. And so in a for-profit business, you're mission driven for sure. In a nonprofit business, you are absolutely mission driven in ways that were just beyond what I experienced running a for-profit company. And I just, I'm so honored that the board continues to trust me to lead the organization. And I think that I can be a very good CEO partner to the board because I've been on the other side. I've served on the board, not just on this board, but other boards that I've served on. And I've observed CEOs in other big healthcare associations who we have served and built programs and projects with when I was the vendor. So, I just sort of do all those things. And, at the end of the day, we want to wake up and feel good about what we do every day. And when you are somebody that has spent a lifetime wanting to be a giver as a healthcare provider, that part of your heart, that servant part of your heart doesn't go away. And I have been able to craft a career where I can feed that part of my soul in the work that I'm doing. And I feel like my job is feeds my soul as much as I am able to give back in what we do. So
Yeah,
that's great.
that part is being fulfilled now.
Yeah.
Rita, I
And
want
so
to
here
be
I am. I've got this big platform, and I created my own platform to be able to go out there and evangelize the good news in spinal healthcare and the need for everybody to think about their spines, their neck and back. Young kids are getting tech neck. It's a real condition.
that is
You
true.
know, backpacks are heavy, and we've got back strain issues that are going. Like there's all kinds of things on the wellness side to the, ruptured discs and other, vertebral compression fractures, bone health, like all the things that matter to your spine. And I'll just say, if you'll let me say this one more thing, because I can talk so much, but I feel like I've discovered your spine, it's like the holy grail. Like it is like the secret to longevity. If you take care of your spine, you're going to live better longer. And there are simple things you can do, movement, simple stretches. Sitting is the new smoking. I'm at my standing desk at this interview, right? So there are little things you can do to have more awareness of your spine health and why it matters. And I'm very passionate about getting that message out.
It is so true. And I agree with you 100%. I want to be mindful of your time, Rita. Do you have a few more moments to stick around?
Yes, I feel like I'm boring everybody with my.
No, 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 not at all. I know we're over our time, but there was a few things just with such rich career in both the for-profit world and now the nonprofit world. What would you say you're most proud of this far in your career?
Wow, that's a really hard question. Um, I I think that, you know, one of the things that I'm most proud of is creating opportunities for people around me to succeed. And that has been the case whether it was in my for-profit business or here in the nonprofit work that I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
The care and keeping of your teams is really important. The people who work around you, they are the ones who are going to execute that mission, whether it's your for-profit mission or your nonprofit mission. They're going to get the projects done. They're going to get the work done. And so to achieve excellence in what you do, you need to surround yourself with the right team. So hire the right people and take care of them, nurture them, because you want them to give 100% of themselves to their job. You want them to be motivated by the mission to achieve excellence in their own sphere. Everybody can be a leader in the thing that they are doing, and they need to be a leader in their thing. And that means we need to empower our teams to do that. And if that means getting them, professional development opportunities, I'm super proud of our research director. She just completed her PhD, and that was a very important step for her in her career. And we created the space for her to be able to do that. And that will be important for her, the longevity of her career. I'm really proud of the fact that people who I have worked with over many years, I'm still in touch with, even if they came into our company and left. I didn't want to ever consider myself a springboard, right? Like come in, learn some things, go on to something else. But I loved it when people came and worked with me and then found something really great afterwards, that the time spent in my zone, in my management zone was time that made their lives better. And I'm really, really proud of that.
Speaking of to team and the importance of the team and surrounding yourself with the right people, how do you even go about finding the right people to place in the right role and position?
That's a great question because when you are in the tech sector, it's an evolving landscape, right? It begins to change right in front of your eyes. That's like we knew that broadband was coming. We're going to write these patents for these things that haven't happened yet, but we know it's going to come. So you've got to, you have to have your eye on the future while you're in the present, and it's really hard. So I think recruiting is very hard. I think that sometimes you make mistakes and you just have to own that. Um, I think that there are all these management um, lessons to learn out there. I have learned that as the leader, if you want to be the leader of your team, you have to be the leader. And sometimes that puts you in difficult conversations and you just have to have them. And if you are guided by your moral conviction to do the right thing for people, then those conversations become easier when it doesn't work out. And I think that's what's hardest for me is that you bring somebody onto the team and you realize at some point this isn't the right fit and there's not a different place where I can place that person. And we just need to go our separate ways. And that's going to be better for everybody. That's going to be better for that person. It's going to be better for the organization and all the other people around it. And you as the leader have to make that happen. So what is the expression? Hire slow, fire fast.
Mm-hmm.
Those expressions are out there. And I think it's just getting your team in place is probably my biggest challenge. It's one of the hardest things that I work on.
Yeah. I feel a lot of things that you do in the for-profit world, you can also do in the nonprofit world. So if someone's listening to this, Rita, and maybe they want to start their own business, or maybe they want to start their own nonprofit, who knows? What advice would you give that person?
Um, Begin by looking inward at what drives you. What are you passionate about? What are you willing to stay up late to miss football games, to, not be present for family things sometimes, to, you know, give up other things that are fun in your life because you're so driven by the thing that you are doing. So look inward, and money can't be the thing. It's great when you make money, and I'm all about that. I have lived the American dream. I thank the Lord every day that I have been blessed to have lived the American dream, and we need to make sure that the American dream stays possible for generations to come. For sure, I volunteer some of my time in the state of Virginia to work on things that support innovation and economic development here in the state of Virginia. I'm passionate about that. So, here just when I think I'm so busy and I don't have an extra hour in my day, I find the time to do something that I'm passionate about. And so, introspect. Take the time for introspection. Be honest with yourself about your goals and go for it. No one is going to do it for you. Nobody will do it for you. You have to be so driven by your conviction and by your passion that you're willing to do things like drive a U-Haul truck to the University of Maryland because you just know it's going to be great. And you just got to do that thing. It's not glamorous. You just have to do it. And that's my advice.
No, I love it. That's great. We all have setbacks or failures in life and both in business. what would you say, what comes to mind as far as the biggest failure you've had, and what'd you learn from that?
I think the biggest failure that I've had is not trusting myself. Not trusting in myself and looking outside, looking to consultants, looking to outsiders to give me advice and you know, help me figure out a path forward when I'm in one of those tough moments.
Mhm.
When at the end of the day, in some of these situations, wasted a lot of money when I knew the answer, but I didn't trust myself. I needed that external validation. I needed somebody else to tell me that. And that sometimes was hard because we didn't have the funds to support doing that. And that's not saying that, you need consultants for things. And I work with consultants all the time, but there have just been moments where I knew better and I should have just listened to myself. And I think that maybe just comes with experience. I don't know.
I love that though.
I'm definitely more confident now in my decision making than I was as a 30-year-old general surgery resident who knew nothing about business. I mean, I really doubted myself a lot along the way. And so, yeah, trust yourself. I knew what I was doing then. I just needed, and I trusted myself. But there were some moments where I just said, oh, maybe I don't know. And I should have just trusted myself.
I love that, Rita. It's so true about, trusting your gut, listening to your gut, right? And you just maybe, like you said, maybe you just need that reassurance from someone else, a third party, maybe, right?
Yeah. And sometimes it doesn't come, and you're like, shoot, I'm back to where I was. I should have just done it in the first place. So yeah.
What would you say is your biggest challenge with your role today as CEO of National Spine Health Foundation?
I think my personal biggest challenge in the foundation is making the case for the foundation. People don't know about spine health, and that's why we're here. We're here to tell people the importance of spine health, raise national awareness, make it a priority. We talk about cancers, very important. We talk about cardiovascular, heart attack, very important. We talk about colorectal cancer, melanoma, you name the disease. We talk about those diseases in society. Skin cancer, right? We don't talk about spine. And so therefore people don't know about it. So it's overcoming this sort of lack of knowledge and lack of societal awareness of the importance of musculoskeletal health, and in particular spine health, even though it's all around us. Every other commercial on TV is, you take a medicine for back pain, right? And it's like it's all around us, but where do we go for national awareness on what to do about spine health? And so I think because that is our mission and that is what we are trying to overcome, it makes fundraising hard. It makes selling our case hard. And my primary job as CEO is to keep the lights on here, right? And so, um, you know, reaching out to companies, engaging with companies, having them understand what we're doing, getting on board with supporting the mission, and whether that means supporting educational programming, just giving to the organization in an unrestricted gift to support what we're doing, looking at the research outcomes that we've developed. I mean, there's so much that we are doing, raising awareness of it and that it matters. That's my biggest challenge right now. And I am up for that challenge.
Last question. When you're not busy working, what do you like to do for fun in your free time?
So I just started playing pickleball.
Oh, that's
That's
great.
super fun. We are blessed to live in this beautiful, bountiful DMV area. And my favorite happy place is Riverbend Park down on the Potomac River up in Great Falls. I love walking. I love hiking. I love tennis. I love pickleball. I like to ski. I do yoga every single day because it keeps my back in good shape so that I can do those other things. And then I just cherish time spent with my adult children. So,
That's great. Rita, if people want to learn more about you and the National Spine Health Foundation, where could they go and learn more, please?
yeah, come visit us at spinehealth.org. That's spinehealth.org. Come see what we're doing. I'm all over that website. You can find us on LinkedIn. You can find us on social media, and the website is just a great resource. Lots of information there. You could start your patient journey. There's all kinds of questionnaires that you can take so you can get curated, personalized information and videos and podcasts and all kinds of stuff. So come see us at spinehealth.org.
Great. Rita, thank you so much. I had an amazing time. It was a pleasure.
And do I say Otto or Odo? You say
Either I say Odo, but either way,
Odo.
as long as you don't call me anything worse, please.
Odo, thank you so much for this opportunity to be on a platform to share the good news about what we're doing and to share the importance of spine health with the world, and to tell a little bit about my story, which I don't know how interesting it is, but it's my story and it's led me to where I am now. And I love what I'm doing and I love the opportunities to share what we're doing. So thank you.
Thank you. It was lovely.
Bye.